All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Stanford. So my name's James So. I am a faculty here, and I lead the AI for Science lab here at Stanford. So a lot of our work's on building AI agents that can try to help to really accelerate and also to automate the kinds of biomedical and scientific discoveries that are so important. So I want to share with you some of the work we're doing recently around building these kind of AI agents and show you some of the applications. So I think the broader context of this is that I think we're in the midst of this really exciting paradigm shift from thinking of AI as a tool for science towards thinking of AI as a scientist by itself. Right? For the past decades, right, so people have been using AI as a tool for solving specific scientific and biomedical problems. For example, if I have this problem of trying to predict structures of proteins, then we can use or deploy tools like AlphaFold for tackling that problem. But first, you have to have a well-defined problem, and you have to collect the data and to figure out how to interpret how to use these tools. But for the past year in particular, right, we're seeing this interesting conceptual shift where, in addition to using AI as a tool for solving these narrowly scoped problems, now we're starting to be able to use AI as a scientist by itself to really help us across a much broader range of the research endeavor, all the way from generating hypotheses, research ideas, to designing experiments and analyzing data and so on. And that change is really driven largely by breakthroughs in what we call AI agents. And you can think of these AI agents as essentially taking these kind of large language models like ChatGPT and using these language models like the brain of the agent. But then we also create arms and legs for these agents. So for example, these agents now can also use different external tools. They can also access different databases. They have their own memory mechanism. And all of that enables these language model agents to be much more flexible, more versatile to help us to address this broader range of the scientific and biomedical challenges. So one example of these kind of agents that we created is the system that we call the virtual lab, which is sort of like a team of agents that mirrors my physical lab at Stanford. So in the virtual lab, we created an AI professor agent. And then working with the AI professor agent, we have a team of different AI student agents with quite diverse expertise, ranging from immunology to cardiology to data science. And the agents have their own group meetings, and we give them also a budget so they can do their own experiments. We also created for the agents a school, kind of like a replica of Stanford, where the agents can actually go to the school to teach themselves how to become better researchers in their domains. So I'll just show you a couple of examples of how these kind of agent teams can work. So the way that we interact with these agents is quite flexible. So I can just tell the agent some project I'm interested in, right? Maybe I want to design a new kinds of material, I want to design a new therapeutic or create a clinical trial. And then there's a principal investigator agent, sort of like the professor or the manager of this team. And then this PI agent will then actually go out and automatically create the different expert agents that have the relevant expertise. So maybe for this project, the PI agent might say, okay, it's useful to have an immunologist, right? So we'll actually go out and create a sub-agent with expertise in immunology. I'll come back and explain a little bit more in a couple of slides how that creation and training process agent looks like. But for now, you can think of each agent as taking like a frontier language model. So it could be like your GPT-4 or GPT-5 models, right? And then we can do additional trainings on top of these models to make them better at doing their specific jobs and tasks. And once all of these agents are automatically created, right, then they start to have their own group meetings where they meet together like we would do and then come up with a research plan. They can also have individual meetings where one of the agents would meet with their manager agent to review some intermediate results, like maybe a data analysis or some coding and so on. So just to make it more concrete, I'll just show you a demo of what one of these virtual lab agent meetings look like. So this is actually the first project we assigned to the virtual lab agents, which is to help us to design binders, right, to the recent SARS-CoV variants. And you can see in the beginning of the meeting, there's the PI agent, then explains to all the other agents, right? The objective here of the project is to design binders, especially to the spike protein, which is like the important part of these new COVID variants. And then the other agent will then speak up and contribute their ideas sequentially. Right? In this case, there's the immunologist agent who spoke up second and recommended designing these binders in the form of nanobodies, right? Which are smaller proteins. And then the machine learning agent spoke up after that and says that, okay, I like the idea of nanobodies because they're small. That simplifies our jobs as agents, right, to predict and model and optimize their structures. We also have a critic agent, right, whose job is to provide more skeptical feedbacks to the ideas of all these other agents, sort of like a professional devil's advocate. It's very useful to have this critic agent in all these meetings Right, so here the critic agent says that, well, if you're going to try to design nanobodies, we don't have a lot of data, public data for that, so you need to be very careful about overfitting these models. So the actual meeting goes on for longer. Here I'm just showing the first part of the meeting, and you can already get a sense of how the agents can interact, how they can build ideas of each other, and relatively quickly converge into a research plan for this quite challenging open project. Now, one of the things that I'm very envious of my AI scientists is that their meetings are so much more efficient than my meetings. One of their meetings might take a few seconds. Right? So in the time I had one of my research discussions, they already had hundreds of meetings. And since they don't get tired like I do, they would actually do this 24/7. And they also decided to actually run these parallel meetings. Right? So basically, for every question they want to discuss, these AI agents will actually discuss it 5 times in parallel, right? Coming up with different ideas in these parallel meetings. And then the PI agent, the manager, will actually pick and choose the best ideas from these parallel meetings to come to explore a broader range of creative ideas. And this pie chart here, in case you're curious, I'm showing basically how often the different participants will speak in these virtual lab discussions. So the human researchers, like myself, we can also participate anytime we want, but we only talk about 1% of the time, right? So our role is to mostly provide more high-level guidance to these agents. For example, we tell them what are the general project directions I'm interested in, some of the constraints we have, like what's our budget for doing experiments. But otherwise, we leave it to the agents to come up with their own research plans and to implement and execute that. In this case, the computational biologist agent has quite a lot of work to do to come up with a plan for how to design these nanobodies. That's why that agent actually does more of the talking. The role of the machine learning agent is to actually do a lot of the coding, the implementations for other agents. Like another agent might tell the machine learning agent to go out and train this model or implement this algorithm, and then that agent will actually write the code for doing that. I want to come back to, now that we see how the agents can interact, I want to just come back and briefly explain how the school works for the agents. So the motivation for having a school for the agents is that if you take the off-the-shelf language models, like even the latest models from OpenAI or from Anthropic, these models are quite good at broad general knowledge, but if you go really deep into your specific technical and scientific domain, then these models may not have the most up-to-date knowledge or the most sophisticated reasoning. So that's why we built the school as a way to bridge that gap. So the way the school works is that we'll first tell the agents some of the topics they should learn about. Like one topic could be, learn to use AlphaFold, right? Or maybe learn to help to design these milli splinters we saw before, right? And then for each of those topics, right, the agents will actually come up with their own learning curriculum by creating a set of questions that are relevant for that topic. And then we enable the agents to actually go out and find all the reference materials, for example, all the papers and download those papers that are relevant for that topic. And after they've downloaded these reference materials, then they will start to do a deep read like we would. As they're reading these materials, then we also enable the agents to basically update their own model parameters. So basically updating the weights of the neural networks, right, under the hood of these models to help them to ingest that new knowledge. It will not be a very good school without some sort of testing. So we also have teacher agents who generate quizzes. And then the student agents who have to pass those assessments. If they don't do very well, they have to go back to school, do additional readings before they can retake these assessments. But don't worry, the school is relatively fast. So usually within 24 hours, the agents have gone through school and have gotten their degrees and now can work in the virtual lab. So a little bit faster than Stanford. So then now that we see how the agents can become better researchers, I'm just going to come back to and give you one concrete example of the kinds of innovations that can help us to accelerate. So recall that the first project we assigned to the agents to help us to design binders, right, to these new COVID variants. And the agents decided to do this by designing nanobodies. And they came up with a kind of an interesting new computational framework to optimize these nanobodies in silico, which is different from how people have done it before. So this is a framework that's created by the agents and implemented by these agents. So they use these different tools. So first they will use this tool called ESM to basically look for stable proteins. And then they will pass those stable proteins right into AlphaFold together with the spike protein right of the target COVID virus. And the AlphaFold generates this nice three-dimensional structure. So the agents will look at that three-dimensional structure to extract some geometric information. But they decided not to trust AlphaFold by itself. So they will take these AlphaFold structures and then pass that into a physics engine called Rosetta, which does more molecular dynamics and simulations to estimate the binding affinity. So these different tools have complementary strengths and weaknesses, which is why the agents actually would use these different tools and extract different information from each tool, then combine that into a holistic score to to help it to decide how to prioritize different designs. And they would iterate through this multiple rounds to come up with the most promising nanobody candidates. So I think this actually illustrates the kind of interesting, maybe what we'll call combinatorial creativity of these AI agents, which is typically how they would work, right? So when they encounter a new problem, they often would start by looking at best existing solutions from different adjacent fields. For example, here they will find tools like AlphaFold or Rosetta, and then they figure out a way to basically combine these existing solutions, right, into a new workflow and to customize that to a new problem, which is much more efficient than trying to solve the problem from scratch. Right, so I think this illustrates how these AI agents typically will often work to accelerate research. And this is all done within a few days, right? And by running and implementing this workflow, they came back to us with a list of 92 nanobody candidates that the agents thought, no, here you can just test these ones. These are the most promising ones to look at. And then we, with our experimental collaborators, then we actually synthesized and made each of these nanobodies and then tested them in the real world in the wet lab. And we showed here are just 2 example nanobodies that were designed by the virtual lab agents. So these are new proteins. People haven't seen them before. And the bottom basically shows the curves, experiments that we did to illustrate how well do they work. So I'll just explain briefly what each curve means one by one. Right, so if we look at the bottom red curve with the open circles, that's where we took the previous human design nanobodies and tested that against the recent COVID variant. It's basically flat at 0, showing that it does not actually bind. And then the second red curve was the solid circles. That's the AI designed new nanobodies now. They are able to actually bind much more strongly. And then these 2 blue curves correspond to if we took the same nanobodies and tested them against a different strain of the virus from 6 years ago. The virtual lab designed nanobodies, which is on top, also shows stronger binding than the previous human designed nanobodies. Right. I think this is quite exciting as a demonstration that the virtual lab within a few days is able to actually take a challenging problem and came back to us with these designs that we can experimentally validate. So if you think of the virtual lab as sort of our way to try to simulate a physical lab at Stanford with a handful of these AI agents, right? So something we've been doing recently is to try to really scale this up and see, can we actually try to emulate an entire pharma company now with tens of thousands of agents. So we call this the virtual biotech. Right, so in the virtual biotech now we have a CSO agent, right, chief scientist officer with his own chief of staff and office and lawyers and so on. And then under the agent, the CSO agent, we have these different divisions, right, that mirrors all the standard divisions of a pharma company, right? So you have a target, division for looking for targets, safety division, clinical development division, and all of those divisions are operationalized by AI agents. And something that's really exciting is that now we can ask the agents to basically help us to design and improve, and we look for new targets and also try to design in these clinical trials. We asked the agency first to help us to curate all the outcomes of these different clinical trials, because those outcomes are typically spread out in literature and press releases. And to do this, the agents actually automatically created 37,000 clinical trial agents. Each of these clinical trial agents then is responsible for looking at one clinical trial, reading all the literature from company websites and press releases, and figure out what actually happened in that clinical trial, so all the outcomes, the success of those trials or failures. So this actually already creates a very useful database. And then based on that, right, we also asked the agent, can you actually help us to identify molecular features that can predict which of these clinical trials are more likely to be successful, which is kind of like the holy grail question for a lot of drug development. And here the agents actually decided to explore something pretty interesting, which is they actually look at single cell data. They say the reason that there's a lot of single cell data, right? So then they actually created these 2 single cell features to look at basically how the drug target is expressed across different cells. And then they showed that these drug targets, right, that actually have these very cell type specific expression patterns are actually much more likely, about 48% more likely to be successful drugs to reach the market. So I think this is really exciting, as some of the early genomic features that are actually highly predictive of the success of different drugs, which then can be used to help us to prioritize the drug discovery development, because each of these trials can be so expensive. So I'll just want to wrap up here, right? So I hope to show these 2 examples to illustrate why we're so excited about the ability of creating these new agents, AI agents, as a way to greatly accelerate and to automate biomedical research. Right? In the virtual lab, we see how we can create teams of agents as our functions as our physical labs to do open-ended research that we can then experimentally validate. And in the virtual biotech, we now created actually a much larger organization of tens of thousands of agents that can actually mirror the cross-functional roles of a pharma or biotech company. And I want to especially thank my students that led each of these projects. So Kyle Swanson for the virtual lab and Harrison John for the virtual biotech. So thank you very much.